Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on high-performance computing. Today, my guest is Molly Rector. Molly is VP of Product Management and Marketing at Spectra. And welcome, Molly.
Thanks, Rich.
Well, thanks for coming on the show today. I understand you have some slides for us. Do you want to go through those?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
The slides that we brought for today's session are a summary of what Spectra Logic spoke about at the supercomputing show in New Orleans about a month ago. And the topic that we were addressing was how storage solutions are evolving and needing to change, looking into the future to be able to accommodate the petascale computing and beyond petascale, where the supercomputing community is really focused right now. To give you some background on slide 2 about Spectra Logic, Spectra has been focused on the storage environment, specifically around tape storage, for 30 years. We've been focusing our efforts in vertical markets that are very, very data intensive, such as the high performance computing market, but also media and entertainment and enterprise and government storage. There's a lot of parallels in the types of problems and types of challenges that these markets all undergo, and it's specifically around the huge amount of data growth that's occurring, particularly in unstructured data, how the systems can access huge amounts of data as they're growing quickly. But even more importantly, how can you search that information? How can you make a huge unstructured file archive queryable, where you can get the metadata searching done to get information all about a single project that may span across many petabytes of tape storage, and looking at how can they solve those problems going into the future for both compliance and accessibility reasons. On slide 3, where it shows what the ITC predictions are around the size of this growing digital universe. The digital universe is predicted to be that there will be 1.8 exabytes of data created in the single year of 2011. That is huge growth as you look at that growth curve, that in a 5-year period, the amount of data being created, not just stored, but created each year, is growing tenfold. What Spectra Logic is focusing on in the announcement of our T-Finity product on slide 4, which was announced at Supercomputing a year ago, is creating storage solutions that are large enough, have the performance, and have the intelligence to be able to accommodate this huge unstructured file data growth. In this market, there's been questions about when is it appropriate to use tape for storage, when is it appropriate to use disk for storage. Whichever type of storage platform you use, how do you have intelligent metadata search engines to be able to query and access all that data? And the announcement of T-Finity was designed to really answer those questions. As the disk market has continued to grow and double in capacity with nearly every 2 years on the disk drive technology, so has the tape technology. But looking into the future, there's the belief that the capability to continue to double capacities on disks are going to reach some physical limits, and the tape market's really going to have to step in to be able to offer these high-capacity tape platforms into the future. But just having capacity really isn't enough. As everyone in the HPC market knows, the speed of the ability to take data off of these really high-performance compute systems, to be able to store the data as quickly as it's being created, but also be able to retrieve that data quickly when the scientists or the users need to get the information off of it. Advancements in tape technology have been really important to be able to offer the throughput and tape exchange and file retrieval requirements that file storage users have really expected from disk historically, and now are expecting from tape as well. Having those systems highly available, where you get failover and redundant architecture, can become important in some environments where having the data available 24 hours a day is important. And just the capability to continue to increase the size of your storage solution, so that maybe you're only storing 2 or 3 petabytes today, but 10 years from now you're going to need to be able to store 10, 20, 30 petabytes. Having a storage solution and a company that will be around to be able to accommodate that is really increasingly important. As you'll see on slide 5 with the image of the T-Finity library complex, that's really a tribute to how Spectra Logic is focusing on being able to offer that long-term commitment for these growing data quantities for this expanding digital universe that Our company has been around for 30 years. We've been investing heavily. We invest about 14% of our revenues into R&D for tape technology, which is more than any of the other tape vendors invest in R&D. And what we're looking at offering with that is not only a large, high-capacity fast system today, but a system that's going to scale to the user's needs 10, 20 years from now, that as they're putting their digital archives on our tape systems, they can be confident that the company will be around, that the product will be supported, and we're going to be continually innovating and investing in new technologies over time. On slide 6, you can just see a quick snapshot of how the market has received the announcement of the Tfinity product, that it really was very timely, that as the digital universe is growing really quickly, and as users are really starting to struggle more and more with how to store and access that content, that the Tfinity came out at just the right time. It's won 3 Product of the Year awards already just this year in 2010, and that was just in its first year that it was available on the market. What it's really done for Spectra Logic is validated our strategy for huge data storage quantities, to just give you a feel for how much the market has really received this, not just from an award perspective, but from an actual user perspective, that we're just closing our Q4 for 2010, and our enterprise tape library sales will more than double versus the same quarter last year. So there's huge growth for Spectra in this space, and there's huge growth for tape library storage in general in this space as the needs for the storage have really changed. Going on to the next slide, I want to go into a little bit more about how the technologies have changed and how tape is being utilized for what we call active archiving. That, as you may be familiar with, the last 10 years there's been a lot of rumblings around what is the future for tape. Is tape alive? Is tape dead? Where will the market really go? And active archiving is a new capability that people are using for utilizing their tape storage technology. Where 10 years ago, tape was focused primarily on backup and creating backup files of customers' data. And deduplication as the technology to be able to only store one copy of the same type of data moved in, and deduplication is a disk-based technology. What has happened is that the smaller tape library market historically that was utilized for backup is now sitting on deduplication appliances, and it's just really shrunk that portion of the tape market. Active archiving was introduced as a formal concept, and the Active Archival Alliance was launched in 2010 back in April, and that's really a new utilization for tape. It's moving tape out of its historic market of being a backup target, and now it's an online file storage that can be used for your file system to see your 10 petabyte tape library behind your C drive or behind a mount point in your Linux file systems. So it's really a big change that the files are stored directly on tape, and it's moving out of the backup space and into that online archive space. What's enabled that, as you look at the next slide, in talking about software capabilities, is not only has the tape library evolved to be appropriate for file archive by being fast enough, reliable enough, and the advancements around the hardware technology, but the software technology has also really evolved. That software applications, some of which are part of the Active Archive Alliance, but there's others as well, have evolved that they can put that file system, whatever the standard file system is that you use in front of the tape library, but can perform all these other capabilities on the data on tape as well, so that you can query it, and you do have that big metadata search capability that's so important in an archive. So both the hardware and the software has really been getting modified over time to be able to come together to meet this data explosion. And the Active Archive Alliance was founded to make sure the hardware and software vendors are working together to solve the problems that the user community needs. As you look at the next slide, this is again just looking at a lot of changes has occurred in the last year, just in 2010, on the tape market, with the evolution of tape, the hardware and software, and also the tape format. That going into 2010, the LTO tape technology, so this is the actual tape media and tape drive technology, only had a published roadmap at the beginning of the year through LTO 6. On April 14th, the LTO consortium announced that they would be committing to doing 2 more generations after that, so extended the roadmap out to LTO 8. So that gives us about a 12-year roadmap of continued commitment to doubling tape capacity, increasing throughput, and just continued development on the tape media side as well. But what's really exciting as you go on to the next slide is not only have we committed to what the capacity and throughput capabilities will be for the next 12 years with LTO. Back in January, IBM announced some research that in their labs out in Zurich that they will have proven that you can get data, that you can get up to 35 terabytes on a single tape within a lab environment. What that proves is while we are reaching physical limits on the capability of disk drives to continue to increase in capacity, we're nowhere near that physical limit of tape. So this technology will be around for a long time, and that's giving a lot of confidence to users to the right technology for these long-term data archives. As we jump on to the next slide and look at some of the other things that changed within the market that have made it possible for tape to really turn around from being thought of as just a backup technology and more of a file online archive technology. The issues that companies and organizations, universities are struggling with having green data centers, power-efficient data centers, or if they're just worried about the cost of powering these huge storage pools that are now being created. You can see on this slide that there is a significant difference in the amount of money and the amount of power that a tape system uses for the same amount of data as a disk system. And while if you're only storing 10 or 20 terabytes, that's not a big deal. As you start to store petabytes of data, this can become a significant issue in helping determine which technology you should be using. Not just power, but on the next slide, you'll see that density is also an issue that, again, when you're only storing 10 or 20 terabytes of data that fits into you in a rack in your data center, you're not too worried about space. But when you start to talk about many petabytes of data, some data centers don't have the space to be able to put enough disk into their environment. And even as they look at some of their older tape library technologies, they've had to change those to newer technologies that have a high-density implementation that the Spectra systems typically can store 2 to 3 times more tapes per square foot in the data center as other tape libraries out there, which is even the other tape libraries that are lower density than Spectra's, those are still higher density than disks. So having the space to store these huge quantities of data has also become a big issue in the data center. And again, talks to why tape is resurging in the market. And then lastly, just to touch on reliability and speed, which were big key points that Spectra addressed when we announced the T-Finity. The tape library technology has really improved that we can now do data verification on tape so that data hasn't been touched for a year, 5 years, 10 years. The tape library can go back and check and make sure that that data is accessible and available. The media technologies also have improved. As you can see here, 700% over the last 10 years, that the actual physical media and how they make the mylar for the tapes, that manufacturing process has really changed dramatically over the last 10 years. And again, is making it appropriate to be able to be used as the primary copy of your file data. That's complemented by the next slide where Spectra Logic has put that complete media lifecycle management capability in, that we have a database and software and an intelligence that will validate the data on the tape, that will make sure that the data you think was put on that tape is still there when you need to access it. And then on the final slide, talking about our tape libraries, we've also made a lot of improvements to make sure these libraries are fast enough that you have to have, if you're storing 10 petabytes of data in a big archive, being able to write data to that archive incredibly fast is one of the key points that users just absolutely require in the HPC environment, that their storage system is as fast as their compute environment. And then also making sure that when you access that data, that if you need to access a file in milliseconds or even in that 1 to 2 second kind of time frame, having that archive data sitting on disk does make sense. But usually that's only 5 or 10% of the data that really has that kind of fast retrieval requirement. For that other 90 to 95% of your data that you can tolerate, it takes you 65 to 75 seconds from the time you click on a file to the time you're viewing or modifying it. That's where the tape technologies really make a lot of sense. And just to tie up how the years really looked, there's been a lot of evolution in our technologies, in the market, and the capabilities of tape. But on the next slide, Spectra was just announced just about a week ago that we won the Storage Quality Awards for tape libraries, which was by Storage Magazine, a tech target company. And what was really exciting about this for us is, well, Spectra Logic is not as large as some of the other companies, as you look on to the next slide, that were rated in the tape library market. Spectra was able to win the quality awards across the board in every category for both the enterprise tape and the mid-range tape. So what that's given us is a really great validation that our strategy is correct on what we're doing with our products, but we're also executing on being able to deliver what we're talking about and support those products around the world. So that's what we talked about at Supercomputing in New Orleans about a month ago. We're really excited about what the market has to come as the data continues to grow over the coming year and several future years. And it looks like it'll be an exciting market for tape libraries as well.
Well, thank you for that, Molly. I guess I've got some follow-up questions if you have a moment. Yeah?
You bet.
Okay. So, I think, first of all, congratulations on this award for these for the quality. I mean, when a customer comes to someone like Spectra, I mean, are they saying they need to store this data forever? How long do they need to store this data typically?
It varies by organization, but there are some organizations that say they want to keep it forever. The National Archives are required to keep their data for the life of the Republic, plus I think it's a day or something like that, so it's for hundreds of years, but that's not the normal environment. Most companies are talking, federal organizations are 7 years. A lot of HPC organizations that are doing research are talking 10, 20, 30 years. So it's really in that 5 to 30 year window is what most companies are talking about, depending on what their requirements are.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the market and some of the changes that have happened, because I just ran a story by my friend Henry Newman, and he talked about how the tape market had been in a bit of a decline, but he was predicting that to change in 2011. What do you think led to that decline, and what's changing?
What I really think led to that decline initially was as disk-based backup and deduplication for disk-based backup became more prevalent over the last 10 years, that where tape libraries had historically been the go-to medium for organizational backup strategies, that became, tape became less of a key role in backup. What's really leading to the changes that are predicting that the decline of tape in backup environments where it's less prevalent, it's shifted into this new market called active archiving, or this unstructured file archive. And now tape libraries are becoming a much more common medium for that file archiving. That's where the huge data growth is really occurring. So tape libraries are being used and developed for a completely new market than they were 10 years ago.
I see. And do you think that deduplication kind of people just didn't have to keep backing up the same data over and over, and so therefore they needed a smaller library? Was that part of it, you think?
Exactly. That we're historically a standard organization that had to deal with Sarbanes-Oxley email requirements would have to store their weekly backups for up to 7 years. Now, instead of having 52 times 7 of the almost identical files stored in a backup environment, deduplication came in and made it possible to just store a single copy of that. And then when they did move their data to tape, it was usually for the off-site disaster recovery, and a much smaller tape library was needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you talked a little bit about some of the competitors being much larger, and what's it like to compete against some of these companies that are 5, 10 times, maybe 100 times larger in this space? How do you stack up against that?
It's always interesting that when you're talking about brand recognition versus product quality and product technology, it always creates an interesting challenge. But for Spectra Logic, we've really found that our long-term commitment to tape libraries are 14% of revenues going into R&D on tape. Just the fact that we're really the only company at this point that's focused solely on this archive and backup storage. We're not focused in other parts of the market. We're really focused just in this area that along with our 30-year history, continued profitability, our year-over-year growth, that companies are starting to see us as maybe we're not the high-volume brand leader, but we're considered the kind of that Mercedes of the market, that we have reliability, we have the features, we have all the key pieces in our technology that are much different and usually a year or two ahead of the bigger companies. We're able to move faster on R&D. We usually identify market trends first, and then the other companies follow. So we can really claim being the innovation leader, and that helps us as we're in talking to customers that may also be talking to IBM and Oracle, that those companies are less focused on tape, and typically their innovation is a little bit behind ours. And for users who are looking at buying a technology that they're going to want to keep for 10 or 15 years, buying a product that has all the features and technologies they need right now, maybe instead of waiting for a couple of years, typically makes less sense for them.
Sure. So, I'm sure you're aware of this big push for exascale. Do you think tape technology is going to be able to keep up? I mean, exascale system would crank out lots and lots of data every second, right? And I can't imagine keeping that on disk for very long. So where's that going?
Yeah, I think that the entire market, as we grow into exascale computing, will continue to have to evolve and refine our strategies. But what we can see is that from a capacity and throughput capability, the tape libraries have the capability to scale much larger than the disk systems and much faster. If you put 480 LTO drives that can each push 140 megabytes a second, if you actually put that many tape drives into a storage system, it would be able to move the data as fast as an exascale compute environment. Right now, the tape technology that we have in Tfinity has the capability to scale to that kind of throughput. There's not actually any computers made today that can push the tape libraries that fast. So I feel pretty confident that the base technology is there. I'm sure new requirements are going to come out on whether or not we actually want to keep all that data that's being created forever, but the base platform capability is there today and really being designed to meet those requirements when they do come about from the compute side.
That's great. So let's just talk a little bit about trends, maybe more in the near future. What are you seeing out there? What do you think we can look for in 2011 and beyond?
Yeah, so looking into 2011, what I think we're really going to see on the storage side for HPC is much broader adoption of LTO tape technology, that the folks who were using tape 10 years ago in HPC, in some cases were using proprietary tape technology. And there's been the start of a trend of really moving over to LTO. And the reason for that is that as you look at an archive, regardless if you're looking at the file system, if you're looking at the storage or the metadata around it, that the pure archivists, who are the scientists really thinking about archive, believe that you should be able to use standard open technology so that 10 years from now, when you need to get your data out of your archive, if it's an open technology, you're going to be much more likely to have the systems and capability to retrieve from there. So that move from proprietary tape technology, proprietary file systems, those types of things in archive, I think will shift a lot to open technologies in 2011, just like you're seeing on operating systems and the file system side as well.
Sure.
That'll be a big shift. We also expect to see that this adoption of large tape systems that we're already seeing in the national labs with TeraGrid, some of the really big users in the supercomputing community. We're going to see a lot more of the adoption of these unstructured data active archives in the more broad HPC markets over the coming year. Really, especially looking at what people are wanting to do with storing more images and more satellite data and more photos, that the really rich metadata can now be created and used over the long term for both, not just text, but also for images, will really drive these active archives to be much more prevalent in outside just the supercomputing community, but also in oil, gas, and research and other areas as well.
Well, thank you for that. Before we wrap up, Molly, I did want to talk. You sent me a white paper. Can you tell me more about what's going on there?
Yeah, you bet. So the white paper that you have a copy of was written by Addison Snell from Intersect 360, and he wrote it in preparation for this year's supercomputing show as well. And what it really goes through is a lot of the topics that we've talked about, and in fact some of the questions you've just asked, Rich. It really goes through and speaks to how Addison sees this market evolving and the shift from proprietary to open systems, and the shift of needing to use standard file systems versus proprietary file systems, and what tape's role will be in that being that large storage target for these systems over the coming years. So Addison, as he always does, did a great job of looking at this from the HPC user community and the challenges and requirements that they have. And he walks through how he sees Spectra and tape technologies and active archiving all coming together to meet those demands of the HPC community in the coming year.
So what do you think the outlook is for Spectra in the future?
The outlook is very positive with the great awards that we've won for Product of the Year and Quality Awards this year, and seeing the enterprise tape library sales for our own company more than double over the same quarter last year. Things look really strong. We've never seen a larger sales pipeline, more awards for the technology that we're creating. All those pieces are coming together to kind of be a perfect storm for us, and things look very positive.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, Molly, I want to thank you for coming on the Rich Report today. Maybe we can have you back. Yeah, maybe we can have you back maybe around ISC time or next year at Supercomputing and get an update. So
that would be great. We'd be happy to do that.
Terrific. Well, that's it for the Rich Report, folks. Stay tuned next time for more news and information on high-performance computing.